Well, did you see him? Did you see the hunter before he actually drew back and shot? Well, if you did, kudos to you, but if you didn't, don't feel bad because the deer didn't either. The hunter in that trail camera video was my son in this tree stand here right behind me. He had that deer perfectly broadside here at this licking branch and horizontal rub. Made a perfect 15-yard shot, watched the deer run off 40 yards and fall over. If you want to see more of that hunt and other footage and details that I'm not going to share here today, I'll try and put a link up here in this video, and if that don't work, there'll definitely be one down here in the description below me. Feel free to check that out. My goal for this video will be to give you some more details on how I use this horizontal rub licking branch setup to position the deer not only in the right location from the tree stand, or more importantly, to give you as a hunter, especially if you're self-filming, that extra few seconds or maybe a minute of time where the deer is distracted and totally not paying attention to what you're doing in the stand behind them. In this video, I plan on covering 3 different things. First of all, the timing of doing a setup like this, what time of year, things like that. Second would be location, how to pick a correct location to put this, to make this work for you. And then thirdly, I'm going to go into more details of exactly how I made it, the type of limbs I used, and exactly what I did in this particular setup to make it work for me. Before I go any further, I want to stop and give a minute of thank you to Ted Miller. I've never met Ted, but it was his idea, or he was the first guy that I had seen that had made these horizontal rubs, and I just want to thank him for sharing his knowledge and be willing to share with other people. I took some of the information that he had gave, kind of tweaked it to fit my own needs here, and obviously, as you've seen, it worked out great for me. I like the idea of a horizontal rub, and I like the idea of making the horizontal rubs or a mock scrape work for you, not only to have it for maybe trail camera use, to put trail cameras over it, but in my case to actually hunt over. And like I mentioned before, I like that extra, buying myself that extra time with a distracted deer can mean all the difference of getting off a clean shot at a deer in the position you want them to be. The first thing I wanted to discuss in this video is timing. In the area where I hunt, by mid-September, a lot of bucks have lost their velvet or are losing it, and until October rolls around, the scrapes and rubs are starting to show up. The boys and I had put the post in, the vertical post for this setup in mid-summer, August sometime I believe, and I wanted to do that to get into the area, get that hole dug, get the post in, get a lot of the setup ready, and then just let it settle, to let the place settle back down and not to disturb it too close to hunting season. When the first week of October rolled around, I came back in and actually put in the horizontal limb to create the horizontal rub, and that is the same time I put in the licking branch over the mock scrape that I made. As I said before, I'll go into more details of the exact species I use for both the horizontal limb and the licking branch later on in this video. Secondly, though, I wanted to touch on location. A horizontal rub that you make like this isn't going to pull bucks in from just miles and miles around. It's not some magic potion that's just going to bring in every deer in the whole area right to that spot. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work like that. So location is key. In this case, I chose a place where a number of different trails came together. I had a trail running vertically here to the tree stand, one that was running horizontally from the tree stand, and one that came down over the bank, and all 3 of them kind of met here. It made kind of the perfect hub for a stand placement anyhow, so I wanted to take that perfect stand placement. I wanted to use this horizontal rub setup then to position that deer in that perfect hub exactly where I wanted to, and again, like I said, give some sort of distraction. Location is also key as far as you want to be thinking of your exact tree stand location. If you don't already have that up, you want to be thinking of where your shooting lane's at, and you also want to be thinking of the predominant wind in your area. You want to have your stand, of course, upwind of where this rub's at, and keep in mind which direction you think the deer are going to be coming from, and place your stand and rub set up accordingly. Thirdly and lastly, I wanted to touch on the specifics of exactly what I did and what had worked for me in this case. In my case, I chose to put this setup 15 yards from my stand. That gives you the perfect distance, in my opinion, for a broadside shot. it's more or less a slam dunk, but yet it doesn't have you directly over top of the deer where you get steep shot angles and make things more difficult on yourself. I put the horizontal rub about knee high, or maybe between my knee and my thigh high. And I think most hunters tend to think deer are a little bit bigger than they are and put them almost too high. And even this one at this height, I've had deer walk directly underneath it. And that in and itself doesn't cause any trouble, but just so the deer are more comfortable working it and it's at a good height, I chose between my knee and my thigh as a good height. Of course, you want the licking branch then, and I chose a post that had her Y on it already. It was actually a limb that I'd cut down earlier this summer, and that'll give the ideal place to put the licking branch, and then you can adjust its height from there. And of course, you want that licking branch as close to natural as possible. I think Ted Miller recommends Scotch pine for the horizontal limb. Scotch pine is very not prevalent in my area, and I guess you could find it, but cedar is everywhere here. So I chose cedar. The idea of not putting that up too early is also important. Like I had said, I put it up in beginning of October. You don't want that to dry out before the deer ever get a chance to work it, because that smell is part of the attraction of bringing the deer to this specific spot. I actually roughed it up some after I installed it with a knife. I fastened my limb to my post and to the tree in this instance with some high tensile wire and 2-inch staples. You want that horizontal limb to stay in place and not fall down the first time it gets worked, but yet you want some movement there, so you have to allow for that. You want the buck to feel like he's getting somewhere, that he's winning, that the things are actually moving around some. You don't want it rock solid. For the overhead licking branch, I think oak is probably preferred, but in my case in early October there, when I made this setup, I just went and found a reel scrape along the field edge and actually cut a limb, and I think it ended up being maple, but I cut an actual licking branch already that they have been using and brought it in here, transferred it to here and placed it, worked the ground just a little bit here below it, and they soon took over. In a lot of my videos, as you can see, the licking branch actually was the most popular. Not every buck worked the horizontal limb by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of them came and investigated or smelled it and sniffed it, and some did work it. I think you can overdo it, and you don't want to be putting these up everywhere where two trails come together. In fact, I had made only 2 of these setups over my entire property this year. So I think there's something to do with overdoing it, and you want to make them look as natural as possible in order not to spook the deer. As icing on the cake, and because I like to play with trail cameras, I found a perfect position to place the trail camera. And that might sound easier than what it actually was. It took a lot of trial and error to get just the right angle that it would monitor the scrape and rub here, but plus be able to have the tree stand in the background behind me that you'd be able to see the hunter take the shot. I end up using a homemade swivel mount that I made in order to get me that perfect distance and angle to capture both the rub and the tree stand and the hunter behind it. It may sound easier than it actually was. It took quite a bit of trial and error to get all that set up properly. The long shot on whether the camera would trigger when it was supposed to, whether it would have good batteries, and whether it would take video to actually get the shot. And of course, in my case, you can see that it did, and we were able to capture that memory for a lifetime, and I'm thankful for that. Well, hopefully you have found this video informative, or if nothing else, entertaining. I'd love to hear from you on what you have tried, and maybe what has worked great for you or what hasn't worked so great for you. Leave them in the comment sections below. I love hearing from you. I think we as a community can learn from each other. That's one way I learn from other videos and other comments from people, and by commenting we can all learn together. And I appreciate that. Finally, please subscribe if you haven't yet. Like, share, I appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to watch my son's hunt in detail. It's sandwiched in between my out-of-state hunt from 2018, and that link will be in the description below and will be coming up next right here.